Thank you for checking out the Media Marketing Podcast, a place where you can learn all things media and marketing related. Don't miss a beat in boosting your business and your brand. In each episode, you'll gain valuable insights, tools, and strategies to apply to your marketing efforts. And now your host, Brian Cargill.
Welcome to the Media Marketing Podcast. Thank you, Jess, for joining me. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me. This is such a fun part of the day just to spend some time chatting with you.
Definitely. And I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. Before going into your introduction, I just want to kind of clear the air for any of listeners. You used to be known, or at least I have known you as the person to go to if shit hits the fan, worst case scenario, like you put out a piece of content that makes a lot of people upset. You were the go-to person to triage and manage this. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I am still cleanup crew. Yeah, 13 years into this game. And it's the same stuff. I might have, some different tricks up my sleeve, but the year of COVID has been heavy crisis comms. And right, when you and I first met, it was really focused on social, and we do a ton in that space, but it ends up kind of bubbling over to other spaces as well, offline and online. But yes, I'm not as cool as Olivia Pope, but I'm kind of, the fixer, at least online.
Yeah. Well, at least maybe you can be the Olivia Pope of Portland.
Yes, I'll take it. She's got great fashion. I am into that.
Yeah. That's awesome. So if you ever have a crisis or problem, cleanup crew, Jess Columbo is your go-to person.
Great. Yeah, send them my way.
Definitely. All right, well, let's jump right into your introduction. Jess Columbo has spent nearly 15 years at the intersection of online community, brand storytelling, and regulatory compliance. Every day, she has the unique privilege of helping mission-driven businesses optimize their marketing programs, supporting talented professionals as they elevate their digital skill sets. And Jess's energy and insights have helped hundreds of executives and institutions build an online presence that's impactful and sustainable. Jess is a speaker, professor, and the lead cat herder and founder of Tiller Marketing. Our team helps mission-driven clients in healthcare, higher ed, finance, nonprofit, and cannabis tell great stories, drive business growth, and navigate communication challenges. Do you want to unpack some of that, Jess? Did you get it all?
Oh man, that was awesome. Thank you. Yes, I am lucky enough to be a consultant. It's one of the hats that I wear, and a team trainer. So supporting individuals, but also, broader teams in their kind of leveling up of their digital and social skill set. And then I call myself a reluctant agency owner. I've been lucky enough to build a practice now and to have the opportunity to hire on some really talented people who help me execute a lot of digital and social marketing for our clients. So I really enjoy being out in the world, speaking and training and doing things. And it's been a bit of a transition. Now I'm able to do it virtually, but I think you hit all the things. Yeah.
No, I think that's great. It sounds like it's been quite the journey, and I think it's great, the services that you provide for people. I think it's sometimes fun to go back to the beginning. Like I'm just out of my own curiosity. How did you fall into this industry? Was it a big crisis that happened? You're like, wow, this is fun. Like, how did you kind of get in that lane?
I'll hit key points. I was a poetry major. I always say, much to my parents' disappointment, at a really expensive liberal arts school. They were like, great, how are we going to pay back these loans? And a staffing agency in town stuck me at a PR firm when I graduated. And I wasn't even familiar with the concept of PR, but I had the opportunity to write and to engage influencers when Oprah was the only influencer, at that time. Yeah, exactly. We were talking about bloggers, and it was a lot of, moms of 8 kids who cut coupons in Utah. And that was the mommy, influencer, mecca. And I went back to school and studied media theory and digital, and focused on palliative care. I had a lot of personal experience, unfortunately, with folks who were at the end of their life or who had just passed suddenly. And so I thought, okay, I'm really curious with the emerging, Facebook phenomenon and influencer engagement, where the intersection is for certain communities of people, rare disease or people at end of life. And that couple years of graduate work and research work kind of rooted my practice and approach in the psychosocial needs that humans have that influence how and why they use the internet, and how that's so radically different than the reason that you turn on a television or a radio. And if I stay home there, that has never changed in 15 years. You're information seeking, you're looking for social support, and you're trying to emotionally disclose. So I want to tell you what I ate today and what I think about everything, because I think everybody cares, and I'm just yelling out into the void because I need somebody to see me and validate me. I need social support. Am I crazy? Is anybody else going through this lived experience? And can we share and, commiserate in that? And then I'm going to Google and WebMD and YouTube search the heck out of things because I'm in information seeking mode as well. So over the last 15 years, it's been kind of an evolution of picking up new tools and practices and platforms, and but always staying home in the media theory that I did in graduate work. And so that's been really helpful. So I was agency side, client side, spent a number of years at Oregon Health and Science University, which was fantastic. And then about 6 years now, we launched our practice, and just following my curiosity along the way. And I think that is mostly rooted in people. You make a lot of assumptions, and as soon as you feel like you're kicking butt and you know what you're doing, then you should probably go do something else. Like you want to stay curious, and I get checked over and over again, especially on the internet in our crisis work, on strategies that were tried and true. And now it's COVID, and it's like, I don't know if we can talk to people like that. I don't know if we show photos of people in groups. We don't. I don't know if we can reach them in that same way. So this year has turned everything on its head in a really challenging but meaningful way. And I just kind of keep pulling on that string of curiosity, and so far so good.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate that. And there's a few things I want to touch upon, but right there at the end, COVID flipping everything on its head. I mean, for me in the video space, you have more people that are on Zoom now than ever. But it seems like everyone is having to address this, and that's a big part of the work that you guys do. So I would imagine a handful of people went to you like, do we need to put out a statement? Any number of things. And if any thoughts come there. And then the other thing I was thinking of is, the tools change, but people don't really. A lot of at the end of the day, I thought it was great that you broke it down, that people are seeking info and that they want to emotionally connect and have validation in the online space, which is really unique. You didn't have that. You can't get validation from your radio unless you call in maybe, or your television. And, they tried to make interactive ways back in the day, but now it really is, you have a very close pulse on any event that's happening in the world.
Yeah. Right. Yes. COVID has flipped this whole thing. Yes, there's 3 areas that I keep working with clients that keep bubbling up that might be of interest. And you've already hit on a couple of these, but the digital space and kind of the ecosystem that we're all working in and vying for people's attention in is just more crowded than it's ever been. So cognitive overload, and all of those folks that they're on their mobile device and they're swiping and they're doom scrolling late at night with their phone over their heads. Have you ever dropped your phone in bed when you're holding it up?
On my face?
Oh my God, it's so embarrassing. It's like a quintessential. Okay, good.
I already do enough to wake up my fiance while I'm sleeping. So dropping my phone on my face is something I try to avoid. But
all right, well, you've got some time still.
I've fallen prey to dropping it in the toilet. I think that's the next tier up from dropping on your face.
I would love to have like that kind of like, here are my secret things that nobody talks about, but everybody does, including take your phone into the bathroom. Let's talk about that. Yeah. Okay. That's a whole nother podcast, I think.
I know people that, or we could bring it up. I know people that'll like hold it that much longer to run out into the, hallway, grab their phone. So that way they have something to do for the 2 minutes. So that way their brain, you need that stimuli.
What else am I going to do in there? Right. Or I might need to turn on the music really loud. I don't know. Yeah. We'll cross that. So cognitive overload, the idea that you needed an information hierarchy on a website or in a digital experience, right? Tell me what the most important thing is, because you've got about 3 seconds of my attention when I get there, and make sure that the ask is really compelling and authentic and feels like it's in the language that I speak, and it resonates with whatever pain points I'm visiting, with. But it's mess, which means also that from an advertising standpoint, it's more competitive. Certain areas have been more expensive for lead generation and things like that. So just a lot of complexity and a lot of pivoting that needs to happen just because the ecosystem is really, really crowded. A lot of opportunity too. If you're not running brand ads, which everybody was running away from brand to like try to get a piece of the pie and do lead gen stuff, start a brand awareness campaign right now, because humans are the second bucket. So like the platforms and ecosystem where we play has changed. Humans, we have all changed. If you're not having an existential crisis, then you're an alien and you can go back to Mars, which is maybe where I'm headed, depending on what November happens. But like the psyche, right? And the sense of urgency, the sense of like safety, how I spend my dollars, there's plenty of research out with McKinsey and Forrester saying we're not as brand loyal as we were. We're shopping local, we're shopping online. And we have different expectations of brands and how they show up and who they show up for. And that was already happening. So if you weren't already looking at the Edelman Trust Barometer every year, I dig it. And what they put out in January in terms of trends, the third bucket is like the continued devolution and decentralization of trust as we know it. So we're like not really trusting media, certain media sources. We were already not trusting government. And we were looking for leadership and vision and safety and security from our corporate leaders. So there was this, and it's just kind of that has exponentially increased in the time of COVID. So I'm talking to most of our clients about one, please, if your leaders have been reticent to be visible and to be consistently, showing up in the public space for your staff and for the general public, we can't really afford that anymore. And then two, if you didn't already have a talent brand kind of story and content mix that you were throwing out, like the health and caring economy is what we're in, where I want to see brands taking care of their staff. So if you weren't already doing employee engagement and an employee internal kind of storytelling and showing that externally, that is low hanging fruit.
Highlight the things that you're already doing.
Jesus, right. And if you're not already taking care of your staff, we might want to address that yesterday.
Well, then, you need an overhaul of your organization, maybe restructure. And a lot of people, I mean, what are your thoughts on like people will, go away for a weekend, they'll come up with a lot of great stuff, bring it back, but then sometimes there's this disconnect of actually implementing it and having that being something that resonates with you within the culture of your entire firm. Company.
Sure. That probably, it just reminds me of the fact that like listening and monitoring and soliciting feedback is this underutilized tactic or strategy, like, whether it's social or whether it's inside your org. I think people are moving resources around quickly and struggling to become more integrated. The crises most of the crises I encountered were the bigger ones, were at Oregon Health and Science University, and they're a big target for a lot of groups. They do a lot of important stuff, but also that invites lots of diverse points of view. It was always fun to deal with internet trolls in that space. But what crisis also does is demands that you start working differently because you can't afford not to anymore. And the first time we had a fully integrated comms team around the same table working, where somebody from patient relations, somebody from provider relations, somebody from internal, somebody from external, somebody from social was all around, and we were all around the same table once a week, was only because we had hit a crisis that demanded that of us now. So to your point, and I think like broader trend wise, there's so many good things that come out of crises, and it just forces us to be better to our people and to show up more thoughtfully for external or internal audiences. So if there is any sense of optimism about 2020, then that's might be it.
Yeah, people have had to kind of shift and adapt, and
totally.
Yeah, it is kind of a shame that we live in this time where it's like very reactive. Like I don't know if I think a lot of people probably have spent majority of this year reacting to 2020 and many of the things that have happened. I don't know. Were any of your clients or businesses that like prepared for this, or were able to transition easily into this?
The ghosts that haunted them, came to bear in this moment, right? Oh man, we knew we needed to get our providers XYZ. We knew we needed to get this kind of crisis plan together that we didn't have. We thought during the lull, I work with a lot of hospitals, banks, some government, local government. We thought that during the lull of the summer between the first wave and second wave, and all of that is kind of subjective depending on your information sources, that we talked a lot about prepping for the next wave, the twindemic of the flu and COVID here in the fall and winter. And we thought, and a lot of that was even just PPE and like, how do we do advocacy to get us the supplies that we need for the second? So there was like logistics and operational, like let's hustle and prep and get all the things that we wish we had pre-COVID, at least get some of those things lined up for the second wave. So that was helpful. I mean, to get everybody thinking about that, whether or not we were able to execute on all that,
well, that could still happen, they're
indeed
still here in the early next year. We could have the second wave. And so, yeah, people already putting their strategies in place.
Totally.
Can they shift a lot of that messaging for other crises, or is this pretty unique, the pandemic and the wording around it?
Yes, with that language and where we show up is different. The like core strategy of what people need to hear and the opportunity for leaders is the same. I've always been aching for courageous servant leaders, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of them, to be honest. And it takes resourcing to get them out in the world and have ghostwriters and have PR people and have all the things that go behind a great corporate communication strategy or a great CEO presence on social. But there's just not enough, and there's this aching need for it. I mean, among different clients and communities, but this one has been different. In the fall, our agency, in the middle of quarantine shutdown, found a radio recording place to start doing emergency PSAs. We had not done a ton of offline. This one because essential workers and people that don't have the luxury or don't have access because the libraries were closed to the internet, kids who don't have laptops at home, immigrant communities that need to know where to get screened and are, Black and brown bodies that aren't considered or respected traditionally in our kind of institutions. That means we had to go to where they are. So the idea of influence and trust, meeting with faith-based leaders to get COVID screening communications out because ICE was picking people up at food banks in Hillsborough, and I couldn't necessarily take the same venues or strategies for influencer engagement in communities. We had to do bus ads, we had to do billboards, we had to do radio spots. We're traditionally a digital shop, but COVID flipped everything on its head in terms of just making sure that that messaging had to get in front of people one way or the other. And empathy meant that, we got out of our box and we met them where they are. But some of it's been a moving target, but again, just like starting with compassion and listening and reflecting back what people need. That's always been the core strategy of crisis, show up frequently and show up quickly, even if you don't have all the answers. That's the hard part, I think, for our leaders. I was ragging on it, but C-suite's really freaked out. Like, I don't have all the answers, which is totally fair. Yeah. It's a hard time.
I know. I think that's probably even, C-suite and beyond, a lot of people showing up quickly and then doing so in a way that feels right, feels appropriate. And a lot of times just things move slowly due to the nature of, how many people need to read, a press release before it goes out. And, how many cooks are in the kitchen for a lot of that stuff.
Yes. And the platforms, Google Ads, for good reason, makes you jump through some hoops to be able to use COVID in your advertising. So it took us a month or two for a couple clients just to get certified to run the ads that we needed to put the COVID comms in front. So there's an added complexity too of just jumping through hoops, of the compliance piece, as you say, whether it's legal needing to review stuff or whether it's Facebook saying you can't use that imagery in your ad. And you're like, damn, I'm just trying to
just trying to help people out,
right? Yes. But
no, that's where shameless plug for Tiller Marketing and what you guys do. You guys aren't afraid of compliance. You aren't afraid of going through those hoops and working through the regulated industries. It makes it really tough to be quick, and it can they can take a really good idea and shoot it down pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah. It just keeps us on our toes, I guess. Creative.
They can dilute a good idea. But
Oh,
I
God,
think
yeah.
I thought you brought up a good point with talking about like kind of leadership and how it is very prevalent that it's lacking in a lot of different domains. And things that come to mind for me is like some of the really good leaders out there are usually more quiet, or maybe they're even fearful of showing up. Do you have any advice for should it be a matter of someone of a CEO, a leader, creating a personal brand and really heightening up that, or still being within the vein of their company? How can they play that toe the line between those?
Yeah, that's really challenging. And it was, COVID outbreak and the unknown and kind of everybody struggling through that. And then there were BLM protests, and it was, is my organization going to show up or how is my organization going to show up in this moment? And you're speaking to the question of, I think these are just a lot of really important dialogues to have within our organization. But the question of, isn't if, it's how we show up. And then there's an important discussion around where kind of the guardrails are, where you're being opportunistic and exploitative of an issue like that, and where you're genuinely adding value. And so you'll hear a lot of people a lot more now on LinkedIn and Twitter and things like that. The idea of going dark on social was something we were just getting people to understand, I think, pre-COVID, where we were like, hey, this isn't your business to add to this, or it looks exploitative when you try to jump into a dialogue that your brand was not invited into. And also that's not in your industry sector, or that's not relevant to your particular community. Because I've been checked many times trying to add value maybe into a conversation that I wasn't invited into as a brand. Facebook groups, for instance, don't go in there and start doing customer service with some neighbors that are talking about some shit, because that you're not invited into that space. So knowing like where you are expected to show up, and having process and workflow in place to get there quickly, and have a messaging framework that is both like got a tone of familiarity and friendliness and care, but also a sophistication that it's in line with your brand and doesn't have a bunch of emojis in this moment. It's a hard
emojis. Now it's like kind of doing a double check behind everything that goes out there, and like how could this be interpreted by somebody else in the worst case scenario? Someone that doesn't know me, and especially in like this kind of soundbite, or people like, I think you called it doom scrolling, where people are just scrolling through, and the interpretation, the intent can be great behind the person posting, but then on the receiving end. So just taking the extra step to be cognizant of,
Yeah. Which is where community managers, who should get paid 20 to 30 grand more than they ever have, they are the brand protectors, brand builders on the front line. And so to get their feedback and say, actually, this is going to be tone deaf because of the conversation that's already happening here, or I want to hold this for an hour and see how this plays out, or we need to be in this conversation right now. They're calling us out for not being here. That person is such a crucial part of this whole thing. And also the education up the ladder to say, hey, leadership, we just have to have a tougher skin. There's call out culture, and there's cancel culture, and there's lots of things. And it's okay if we learn in public, but not at the risk of X, Y, and Z, whatever is a non-negotiable, right? In terms of safety or security, or, all the things. But there's also a humility that is awesome, and when you learn in public. And so there are calculated risks, right? And then you'd say, thank you for your grace, and thanks for that feedback. And I've seen some brands do a really nice job of kind of service recovery when they had awesome intention. They probably put a lot of thought into what went out, and it still pissed somebody off. And it was like, oh, yep, that was a blind spot for us. And now they're running to hire a DEI consultant, unfortunately. But not that you shouldn't be invested in equity work, holy crap, in your organization, but that won't solve culture issues. A lot of our work, you start picking at it, and it's a bigger thing. Then we get plugged in with HR, or we get plugged in with internal comms, and we start thinking about like, how do we need to, Ann Handley at Content Marketing Prof says, that great content marketing is not making up anything. It's just telling a true story well. And I think you started, some of this conversation with that. It's like you're sitting on a gold mine of really good stories, and being able to find those and put them out in the world is hard for a lot of us, especially when we get to the top.
Definitely. No, I think like you said, having a DI manager, things like that, they help you see some of the blind spots that you might not already notice within your organization. So there are professionals that can help you. And
heck yes.
They're kind of two. Yeah. One of the things you brought up was like kind of learning in public, which has been something that we've brought up on the podcast a little bit. Like, I think people are, I don't know. I go back and forth. People are understanding, people are not understanding that, like, you grow and develop over time, and brands, need to learn and grow over time too. And so sometimes that does take a slap in the face where you did something that offended somebody, but then you learn from that and you grow. And I think it's really magical about the work that you do is you can take a negative and turn it into something that's actually a positive at the end of the day. Maybe not in the short term, but for the long term, you're thinking, brands are built, good brands are ones that are built to last a long time. So playing that long game and making sure that in the eye of the public, how are you, you've made growth and that you've addressed those things. I think, going dark and not addressing them really does not play well.
Right. Yeah. During BLM, I think I put out a LinkedIn post that said, your silence will be your statement, which doesn't mean you go out and you make this placated, like we stand. If you don't, in which case you need to get to work. This is that, which is then where we get into it. This is a larger conversation around what the true stories are about your brand. But yes, I used to say, or I had a line that sounded good and kept people awake sometimes in talks, that I can't turn apathy into advocacy. If you love me, I can work with that. If you hate me, I can work with that too, because you felt something to come at me and to give me that feedback, which also means you gave me an opportunity to make it better, or to give more context, or to learn. And so not that trolls are a gift, but negative feedback, or community feedback, definitely it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I'm kind of torn because there's like that old saying where it's like, if people hate you or dislike you, then you're doing something right. But I don't know if that actually holds true in today's climate where now people are doing stuff that's, people are overreaching beyond just like, oh, like I made a little goof. They're saying actually offensive,
indeed,
and discriminatory things. So.
Yes, no, absolutely. There is a line for sure. There's I think the hope is that everybody's investing in doing better and understanding more, and it's if and when there's an opportunity for you to show up, if you're worried about doing it perfectly versus not doing it at all, show up imperfectly. And I think I think a lot of the conversations that I'm not having enough, but we're starting to, is around your brand promise, your brand equity, and taking a new look. I've encouraged a lot of our clients lately, like remap out your consumer UX, and that probably holds for your consumer psychographics too. And like, let's take a fresh look and see if are we the organization that we always said we were? Let's do a little postmortem on the last 9 months. And if we didn't show up in the ways that we wish we had, or the ways that we had promised everybody we would in a moment like this, what needs to change operationally, and then in terms of, mostly operationally. How do we move money and people around and resource things that were not resourced and all that good stuff, so that I'm not telling any fake stories. I'm telling very true stories of the work we're really doing, and the money that we're really investing.
A big thank you to our sponsors over at songtub.com. That's right, song or music and a tub, like a bath, but more fun to say. Tub. Anyway, you can check out Songtub's website for any of your music needs. In fact, the song playing in the background right now is from Songtub. So why pick them over anyone else? Well, they curate the music. And I know the guys, so that means I know that they're selecting great music for your project. a lot of other companies will brag about how many songs they have, maybe 100,000, 200,000, maybe even 1,000,000. But honestly, I don't have time for that. I don't have the time to just sit down and go next, a song not so great, trying to figure out where the best music is. Songtub.com, great place to get your music. And now I'm excited to offer you the first month for free if you go to songtub.com/pro, PRO, and we have a promo code for you. Yes, that's right, my name, your host, Brian, Bryan, and that will give you your first month free to have access to a huge music library that you can use towards your next video project, podcast, or any of your general audio needs. Anyway, back to the show. Definitely, yeah, providing those opportunities and
Totally
making sure things are fair and equal across the board. Shoot, I was
yeah,
gonna ask you
we got off, but it was
no, it's okay. One of the other things that you brought up was talking about, like, just very briefly, those Facebook groups, and I think that might be relatable for a lot of the people tuning in, as they might be tackling that as a marketing tactic for themselves. So you recommend maybe not going into Facebook groups and messaging stuff. Facebook groups have taken on a whole nother meaning. It used to be anyone could create a group. I think you still can create a group, but because they've been around for almost a decade now, you have some longevity and kind of some gatekeepers on who can be let into a group, and they've become a little bit more prestigious. So yeah, I guess you mentioned, like, maybe don't go in and start posting unless you've already built some kind of rapport with that group. Is that kind of where you come from?
Yes. And I think, groups are fantastic. I think LinkedIn has some really cool opportunities for engagement and things like that. But you as a brand and you as you are really, really different. And I remember talking with a utility company early this year, and they said, we see misinformation about our organization happening on Nextdoor. Can we go in there as an organization and redirect some of that or course correct? I also work a lot with patient advocacy groups and patient communities on Twitter and Facebook and things like that, and they are a powerhouse. So when you show up as a brand, there's just a lot more sensitivity that needs to happen, because nobody invited brands in there. That's a community for and by the people. So if you genuinely, there totally are opportunities, and Yelp and Nextdoor, and they have paid opportunities for us to show up. And there might be a time where it's appropriate to, on the side, if we're tagged or if something's happening, you have one of your HR customer specialist people be like, hey, actually that program is totally open to people who make da-da-da. It might be appropriate, but generally, if it's a community that that you're not actually a part of, that you've not been a part of, that you've not built trust in, and you want to pop in there, it really looks opportunistic and shitty. And you'll get checked on it. So
they'll call you out for it. Okay,
most of their house rules, admin rules say that anyway. This isn't a place to sell stuff. This isn't a place for corporate interests, but there totally are great opportunities to engage those communities. I think influencer engagement right now is fascinating. I've been working with some insurance companies and some other folks to talk about organic, because we can't pay people in a lot of our industries. And also it's not as authentic, obviously, when we do. So what can you offer, and how can those relationships kind of build more organically? So I think that you could apply some of that to your group's work.
Gotcha.
Probably. Yeah.
No, that's good. Good word to the wise of, be careful with these different groups on, don't overstep your bounds. And you talked about kind of influencers right now, or just like kind of what traffic looks like. I've heard mixed of whether people are on their phones more or people are less on their phones. I think that, and so, that, like you said, a lot of the things that are tried and true that have worked for a while now during this period have completely changed. Now you have a lot more remote workers, and it's noisier than it's ever been.
Right.
Are there any kind of trends or things that people, obviously, brand promise, addressing COVID are big things. Anything else that people should do while their customers or their clients are at home?
I think 30+% of women have left the corporate space because they have to be primary caregivers. That's a problem. So I think employee
And when you say
engagement.
primary caregiver, you mean like teachers to their kids because their kids can't focus in school all the time, you know?
Right. And generally speaking, men, if it's between a man and a woman and a hetero couple, won't be the one to step away from his work for many reasons. So yeah, this is setting us back a few generations as female professionals. And we've already had a hard time getting into the room and getting paid. So and beyond that, I think it's just the caregiver economy that we've never compensated. So people who are caring for older aging parents, people who've got, other generations in the home, people that are single parents, of course. I think anything and everything that you can double down on, and this is a Marcom strategy to take care of your people. Obviously, the benefit is retention, recruitment, and really fabulous stories that we get to tell that are very true. But revisiting, there's like a trite adage where people would ask me to write their social media policy and get people to post on social media, their employees, about how great the company was. And I said, well, show me your parental leave policy, because if we genuinely take care of our people, they'll be the brand advocates that you want, and it'll be a lot more impactful and effective and sustainable and scalable than if I spend $40,000 of your money on a social media tool that does that, or like tries to artificially force it. So this is the time when people they've got a lot going on in the background and they don't have compensation for the new tools that they need to have to work from home. And they're struggling, to wear a whole lot of hats all at once. That the best defense is a good offense. So it's also a really important crisis management. I don't have to clean up your glass door if we work on taking care of our people right now. So I think that is a really exciting trend, because a lot of us were already thinking about employee engagement and knew that there was lots of potential in that space. And now there's just opportunity to kind of put our dollars there too.
Yeah, to overhaul and reassess, reanalyze, and how can you show up for servant leadership? How can you show up for
Totally.
people internally and making sure that they're not only compensated but actually treated fairly, treated respectfully,
right?
Creating equal opportunities for everyone. So.
And then you've got content, storytelling, curated resources, right? All those folks are going to be sending you pictures of them volunteering to help move somebody out of Medford when the fires came, right? Or they're going to show you the safe hang in the park they did with their colleagues, or they're going to take a picture of their badge when they're at home with a cup of coffee. Like, you've got then a lot more story finders, which is pretty cool. So just hits on a lot of levers, I think.
Yeah, all these like kind of micro stories. Do you have any strategies or advice that you give to like creating that engagement of employees, getting employees to want to post more? And do a lot of organizations create kind of a guideline, like, hey, if you're going to post, make sure you're using this kind of wording? Like, do they regulate it, or do they allow people to post and then review it after it's already been posted? Like, how does that process work?
Yeah. All of your spoiler alert is that all of your employees are already posting about you. And the police kind of, here's what you can and can't do, is not quite as effective, and certainly not a culture builder as much as, I think one of my favorite, most effective strategies is to get social media education in your new employee orientation. It's the point at which they are most excited and most apt to become a brand advocate. So if I teach them right then and there what my channels are and how they're empowered to participate in those communities and to show up and share safely, hey, here's where we want to be careful of, here's some guardrails, but really we're excited to have you and we're excited to see you in this space sharing. That has been one of the most effective. And then social media managers teams, digital marketing teams, open door policy, virtually or otherwise. So as you socialize your strategy, which we probably don't do enough, like we do lunch and learns at 1, defining a strategy, and then 2, making sure everybody in the organization knows that you have one and inviting them in to participate in it with you. And then then you'll start to get Bob and Sherry sending you photos of her volunteer food bank work, right? And their heads are cut off. And you're like, okay, Sherry, let me show you how to use your phone. And then you've got Sherry in them, right? Like it's definitely a process, and a lot of the work is internal relationship building. But then Sherry comes and says, hey, I can't minimize my screen on this, and I feel stupid. And you're like, there's no stupid questions. And that build of trust and relationship internally is a game changer for the effectiveness of your external social marketing program. So I love NEO, New Employee Orientation Touchpoint, or annual trainings. And that can be in conjunction with your compliance training, but everybody kind of is annoyed that they have to take that compliance training anyway. So their eyes might glaze over at the social media ones. But a lot of it is kind of internal sharing and socialization of your strategy, and then just open door policy thing.
Yeah, I like that, kind of creating trust, making it a safe place, and
Totally.
getting everyone on the same page. I know. I only imagine, like, before social media, I guess the equivalent would be to go onto like a news show where you get interviewed by a reporter, and
Right.
then you'd tell most of your employees, hey, don't say anything to the press unless we know about it, because usually if they're getting interviewed, it's
Right.
not for the best of circumstances.
Yeah, I write a lot of PR policies, that social's a part of, where it's like, if you get contacted by media, if you're a surgeon, if you are our financial advisor, please direct them to our central PR team. What you're saying is, did you know we have a PR team and our only job is to help tell the stories of the work that you do? That's the same adage that I use, from a social perspective, is that if you've got a great story, I'm certainly empowered to share it, but send it my way and I can help get it out there. From a PR standpoint, you're like, let me do the wrangling, and also let me do some media training real quick, because we're going to have you in front of people, or maybe we don't. But it's tricky when, your employee, there's a car crash and they get quoted on the street, right? And it's like, that's their business. If it is in relation to your sector, I've had leaders, especially C-suite, are like, hey, I want to be really careful on the equivalent might be like man on the street interview is just their Twitter account. And I had a really great gal, she was head of diversity at a company, and she said, I can't repost a New York Times article about diversity in the workplace. It'll look like, because people know who I am, that I'm speaking on behalf of my organization. So that social has definitely made it more complicated to navigate that, your personal brand versus your professional brand, and how you disclose that on your accounts, and how you have privacy parameters, and what you say about your org and what you don't. But that's
I agree. It's all. What? Say that last part?
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. We could dive completely. Yeah. How do you manage your own, personal brand, and making sure, everything is to code? And it has added a whole nother element to it. And that might be why some of the leaders are kind of afraid to show up, is because they don't want it to be taken out of context.
Totally.
But.
Yes. But like you said, if we've got so many people turning to a digital, networking and sales pipeline and all the things, then please get your C-suite on LinkedIn with a professional photo that doesn't have their dog or their wedding dress on or a glass of wine. If we could get everyone in the world to have a professional photo. LinkedIn, yeah. And maybe some video, maybe they could work with you and start doing some thought leadership that way.
There we go.
That would be stellar. Yes.
You heard it. You heard it from Jess. Thank you.
Yes. No, I mean it. Yeah.
Well, speaking of, video, or like kind of talking about individuals, you've brought up, stories quite a bit. And I think, are you starting to see that the C-suite executives are more warming up to the idea of stories and the impact they can have? I mean, we've had stories since the dawn of time, but I feel like it's become even more of something that people are acknowledging and recognizing has such a big impact. And so is that conversation becoming a little easier with some of the executives?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. And we just worked on a project just to, it was a large video production around trying to drive people to use online telehealth. And the director, we had thought through a concept that was very like, step 1, step 2, do the things. And he came back to me actually a couple weeks ago and was like, this won't engage people. And if the objective is to keep them in there and interested and entertained so that they understand it, I need to wrap a narrative around this. And we're going to follow a day in the life of a young woman who schedules an appointment. And I was like, duh. Well, I'm a freaking creative writing major, and I had totally lost sight of the fact that even in kind of nuts and bolts product services, incredibly more impactful and successful as a piece. So then selling that to the client, it wasn't too hard. But to your point, I don't think that's not always been the case. And I think sometimes we still run into that rub, especially when we're on super lean production schedules and super lean resources. It's like, let's just get it out. But the added investment of, of a narrative, a story. I think a lot of us forget it, even practitioners that have been storytellers for a long time.
Yeah, like you said, when you're trying to get something out the door pretty quickly, and you kind of forget that story is a great way to get people emotionally, and there's something about it that gets people to people just think in those terms.
That's exactly what it is. That is how you process your past. That's how you experience the present. That's how you forecast your future. Like, you speak in that way, you process yourself in that way. Yeah, totally. You're right on.
Exactly. So you talked about brand, sorry, we're already about halfway through and we haven't even like gone to through the outline, but I think we're already going into some great territory here. Yeah, but talking about the brand promise, I think is, people think about their brand story or their brand statement, value statement, but brand promise, I don't have as much familiarity with it. Do you want to maybe explain for our listeners and maybe what's a good place to start with drafting brand promise?
Yeah, and I'm certainly not the brand expert. We use it a lot more, that terminology, in the world of content marketing and content strategy, where it's kind of what are the expectations, how we show up, when we show up, where we show up. And I quote a lot, there's a really great head of innovation at Cambia Health Solutions, Mohan Nair. He's phenomenal. He's so smart. And I watched him talk at a conference once, and he said that he had flown in to the conference I might have already told you this, but he flew in on an airline, and the flight attendant did some safety instructions in kind of a silly, goofy way. This is pre-COVID, obviously. And he said if it had been Virgin Air or Southwest Air, he would have thought that was fun. But because it was Delta or United, it made him feel uncomfortable. And he said, I don't give Delta permission to be silly as a brand to me. I don't give that brand permission to be silly. And he said, who does your brand have permission to be? And that's not your decision. That's your customer or community's decision, right? And I think brand promise wraps in there of what is the expectation? What if you promised everybody how and what you would show up with, and are we doing that in all touch points? So it's a sobering kind of fact check, or assumption check for a lot of us, especially in this moment, is like, what have we promised, and what does that look like beyond a social media post or a piece of communication that goes out? So we're working right now with a healthcare organization that's bringing in a new tech partner, and this health center is known for its deep relationships in the community, and it's we call it cradle to grave. They take care of babies. Those babies grow up to be moms that bring in their babies. Like, this practice has deep loyalty among its patient base. And we thought, okay, we're bringing in a new technology partner, and some of those people will be physically in the clinic, and also that brand will be visible within the clinic. And also it'll bring in new kind of functional experiences for patients. And we have made a promise for 80 years to show up with and for patients in this way. This is their expectation. How will we make sure that that is fulfilled with this outside kind of partner as they come in? And that might mean just being really proactive about communication and helping people through that that transition. It might mean thinking about, is there a space for the mom with the baby to sit while she's waiting for test results? Or it might mean changing up the kiosk experience that's going to come in, because we've got a lot of older folks who are unfamiliar or uninterested in that kind of technology in their patient experience. But holding really firm to what we know to be true and what our patients value about us, with each new step and announcement or change, and making sure that we're still following through on that, goes way beyond my patient email that I'm going to blast. And that seems really valuable right now, because everybody's having a really hard time.
Yeah.
And, you can't afford to not kind of follow through on those promises, I guess. Yeah.
I think that's huge. Yeah. Thank you. That awesome answer. Yeah. I think,
helpful. Okay.
Yeah. Very helpful. I think following through on the things that you say you're going to do. And I thought that was interesting. You brought up like kind of two stories there. The one literally cradle to grave. I've heard of that with products, but with people,
Yeah.
so I think that was really interesting.
Right.
And then the other one you talked about with Delta, not being able to show up in that way. So you're kind of your brand perception, I guess, is where we're going there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the market determines like your brand perception, like who you are, and the market will reflect back to you in the market. When I say those are people will tell you, hey, this is how we think of you. Do you work with brands to help change that perception? Like if they do want to, like, hey, in this moment, they don't see Delta as funny or this joking kind of brand, but if they wanted to change, like, could they do it in 5 years? Could they do it in 10 years and completely rehaul? Would it need to be something from the top or a new CEO? I think like Virgin,
Right.
you think of Russell Branson, who's like, he is this a very interesting personality. I think it trickles down from the top.
Right.
Yeah. What are some of the things that come to mind for you, Jess?
Yeah, I think, folks that are looking for a shift, are motivated by a couple things. It's either that the marketplace is saying, we need this and we don't have it. Can you show up for us in that way? Or they're saying, opportunistic, right? Hey, the trend is that we're going into a health and caring economy. Do we want to launch a white brand, a white listed Kleenex box or something, and is that so far off our North Star, or does it feel like a really nice compliment that just extends us into a new market and introduces our value proposition to this new, client base. But you've got to have some there, right? Like then that Kleenex, if the promise is that your highest quality, I think I see a lot of people just saying the same story and presuming that that's what their customer or community wants and needs in this moment, and just not enough listening. Social and otherwise. But I was working with a community of transportation execs, and everybody in the trucking industry will tell you that they're a family. Every company is a family. And historically, a lot of those companies are families. They're run by a dad and a son or a daughter, and they're, transitioning kind of the turn of power. But what does that look like? What does that feel like? And difference in telling a utility story versus a differentiating story. And utility being, here's where I have to show up because this is the expectation of us. Differentiating is a yes and to that, to say, here's an opportunity for us to add value or to kind of expand on that core narrative. And so I certainly wouldn't encourage people to jump off and do something that's really off center because there's opportunity. Or do that before they've done the hard work of being operationally ready and culturally ready to
make those kind of statements. Yeah.
To expand in that way. Yeah. But perception is a tough one. And some of those are going to be, I think one of the points I was thinking ahead of this conversation was just one of the things that I'm seeing more or getting bumped up on. Digital and social is getting resourced more. It's not the bright, shiny new thing. I've got a lot of kind of seasoned execs that weren't interested that are finally interested, and that's really exciting. I'm still getting people that have an expectation that storytelling and content marketing is going to be a quick fix or a lead gen strategy, as opposed to a marathon.
Yeah, I don't know why that perception.
A little tired of that.
Yeah, I think people a lot of times they see as a silver bullet or a brand, that they can just build a brand overnight, especially on social, where it just takes time. I think the brands that have a lot of success today, they were starting that journey in 2015, 2016, and really taking it serious then.
Right. So the brand perception, if we want to shift that, we got to keep showing up over and over and over again with that in mind, and over time, we'll see that shift. But it's not the quick fix silver bullet thing. It's a little fatiguing for sure.
Yeah, I can just put up a few posts and then we'll have all this traction. Everything will go great.
Right. I say if you build it, they will not come. So get yourself some ad dollars, man, or you're not going anywhere. Yeah.
Exactly. I think you brought up something good, which was like talking about being like different and how the messaging, talking about in the transportation industry, family being I just watched the movie The Founder. I don't know if you've seen that with Michael Keaton. It talks about the McDonald's story, about how, Ray Kroc came in and it kind of helped them expand their franchise. But there's a scene in the movie where he's like, we are a family. And like, you hear that time and time again. And I think in business, what are your thoughts there? Do you like, to me, a lot of your dealings, I didn't come from a good family, so automatically I cringe
Yeah,
at that
exactly.
at that concept in general. But yeah, in family, I mean, you can't fire your mom or your dad or your siblings.
Yeah,
But
I've
in
tried.
is
Yeah,
that yeah, you try just hang up.
yeah.
But yeah, in business, it's a little different. So like, that probably isn't the best terminology. Do you
Right.
have any recommendations? Like, would you recommend a more powerful statement? What are your
Right.
thoughts there?
The transportation industry, I love what they're saying, which is that we are invested in each other. I mean, it's very much their recruitment storyline, but it also is a great one for retention, and it's a great one for just even partner outreach and things like that. That there's that level of investment in one another, and that, you know, when you're here, your family kind of storyline around client experience or customer experience or employee experience can be a really delightful thing. I just don't see enough folks telling that story in a really, differentiating way. If it's true, then yeah, I think even pulling that apart to say, what do you mean by that? What does that look like? For those of us, who came from kind of a funky background, then what do we wish we had? And how do I find that in the context of my professional space? But I've also personally in previous work experiences had a boss say, I want everybody to bring their whole self to work, the messy whole self that you are. And I've had introverted colleagues be like, no, thank you. I go home and I change my clothes and I'm myself, but I don't feel comfortable bringing my whole self to work in that way, you know, or oversharing, and you know, obviously don't have a problem with that. But I think
You're doing great.
It's a moving target and it's different for everybody. But the worst thing would be to be inauthentic about it, I suppose. And then beyond that, is there an opportunity for us to tell just a more specific story about what that looks like within your organization, and what the values are that underlie that metaphor? Like, what's so good about being a family then?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is kind of an interesting example that comes to mind for me. And if it doesn't make sense to include in the podcast, we can always take it out. But
I'm sure it will.
Just recently, I think a big prominent figure that I think of is Ellen DeGeneres. She had the mentality of, hey, we are a family. I didn't see her statement that came out, but she came out. What were your takes as somebody that, you know, as crisis management? She did come out, and I just, from the headlines that I read, she apologized and said, I gave off this persona that I was this family, or I was this friendly, nice person, and that's not really the whole case. Do you think she handled that well? Would you have handled
I don't know
differently?
if I've seen all of her statements. I remember as it was blowing up, and it was like, oh, and then I saw her kind of teary-eyed up on the show about it. I mean,
yeah, if you weren't following it, that's fine too.
Totally,
I was just curious your thoughts, because that's the first one that comes to mind for me.
Totally,
For someone
that's a really interesting
recently has had to change, because she did have a persona for a long time, but
yeah,
she's one person, but then she's also like the brand of the show. So
right. Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that plays out, if she's able to rebrand herself as this person that doesn't have to be. Maybe it's liberating for her that she doesn't have to be this nice person all the time, which is interesting, because we hear, I don't know if you've heard, like, all these actors and actresses and famous profiles throughout time. Like, you see them on screen, they look so nice, but then you're like, someone's like, oh yeah, in person they're a jerk. Like, you wouldn't really want to talk with them.
Right. Yes. Right. Yeah. Right. And I wonder, I knew that she had taken responsibility for whatever issues we're having within the organization, because unfortunately it's your problem at the top. For her to come out and then you get the storylines of employees saying, like, actually that person is really crappy in the hallways, or she just yells at us at staff meetings and things like that. Man, short-sighted. I can appreciate that she has a lot of handlers trying to craft and protect a persona that drives ratings and dollars from advertisers. And then she becomes a prisoner to it in some way. It's been an interesting tangential kind of idea, is the way that you have personally branded, or whether or not, a lot of people are like, I don't know how to build my personal brand. And we're like, just be you. And then feeling like maybe they are also prisoner to it at some point. If you want to move industries, if you want to shift career paths, if you, I've seen that from folks as well.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And a lot of, and who did I heard some kind of marketer who was explaining how it's okay to change your mind later. So like in 4 or 5 years, maybe you were, Sally, the real estate person, but now you're Sally, the consultant. So like that's
right. Which feels really risky, doesn't it, for us, that, for small business owners and for ones that work their butt off for referrals and networking. You're like, wait a minute, people need to know what my elevator pitch is, and I'm the video guy, or I'm the video strategy guy, or whatever it is. And you're like,
a cactus knows how to survive. It can endure scorching heat, limited rainfall, and defends itself against critters daily. Your business is no different. To survive harsh conditions, it's important to develop deep roots using media content that'll continuously nourish and support your marketing efforts day after day. Tactus Media is here to help you determine a strategy and create media content. Together, let's map out the next sequence of videos, podcasts, and social media to help your business thrive. Work with Tactus Media, media tactics that stick. Ouch! Visit tactusmedia.com to learn more.
Hopefully COVID is helping us expand that, right? Like, I'm also the guy that like has a weird cat run in the background, and I also bike, and I'm a whole person. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's always been my struggle, or what I found has been challenging in the early stages, is that people only have limited like attention span, or a limited amount of things that they think you can be good at. So I think for a lot of this advice for a lot of the business owners that are listening to this podcast, like saying that you're good at one thing and being known in the minds of your customers as one thing, and then branching out has seemed to work a little better for me. But there's a lot of things I'd like to be able to do, but you start saying all these things and people just get overwhelmed, or they just start kind of zoning out, because they're like, no. And they're probably thinking back in their mind, well, I'm not good at everything, so why can this person be good at all these things,
Right. Yeah. If you only have enough, like a certain amount of hours in the day, right? Does that take them away from this thing? Yeah. How could you be? And I suppose there is a point at which you're like, I know a little about a lot kind of person, but it does strike me that as you evolve, you'll identify the threads, so that in your elevator pitch, it's much less about the down in the weeds tactics. And it's much more about, here's the broad strokes. Here's what I do for people. Here's how I approach the work. Here's how I think about my work. Here's where I find joy in the work, whether that is a video production, or a creative strategy that I'm developing, or a really dope bike event that I'm putting on the weekend.
Are you a biker?
No, I wish. Oh my God. My husband is, and he's like, let's get bikes. And I was like, okay. I'd rather have a scooter, but I do really love biking. I just don't trust myself. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole other element there of, keeping your balance, cars going by, weather, and it's an investment Portland too. And
yes, I need to warm up to it. So I need my scoot.
Yeah, you can always rent one and see if you like it, but that's cool. Yeah. But those are all the elements that go into someone's personal brand, and how do you showcase and highlight some of the things that you like to do? I'm always trying to make things that are like, I think are interesting to people, trying to just keep that interest element high. Cause there's a lot of things. I mean, I can take photos of the eggs and toast I eat for breakfast every morning, but I think that gets old for people. I can only make so many different kinds of faces out of the out of the materials, but
I was just talking to a colleague yesterday, and she said, I've been walking around town doing deliveries in her body of work. And she said, I was taking pictures of all the funny stickers that are around town, and all the kind of like, pop art that's popping up in different places. And she said, I started getting artists following me. And then a couple days ago, one of the artists reached out. He said, that's actually mine. Would you like to come to my production space and see how I make that stuff? And she's become this kind of unique niche she's not an influencer in that space, but she was interested, she was curious, she was creative in that space. And now she's built this whole new network that she was never familiar with before. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is such a neat reminder that follow your interests, which was Twitter's campaign in 2008 when they had everybody join and nobody stay on because nobody knew what to do after they got on Twitter. So they started the follow your interest campaign to say, okay, if you don't know what to tweet, just follow people who are tweeting. And it was trying to get people to come back after they had created their profiles. But that still rings true now, and good things happen as you do that.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it exciting, the internet in general, because if you are passionate about Star Wars, you can start a Star Wars podcast, a blog, a YouTube channel, and really hype it up. And
totally. Riches in the niches.
But yeah, that's what I was about to say. The niches are where it's at.
Yes. And if you're not hanging out on Reddit every once in a while, I think that's problematic. I feel like Reddit has been this treasure trove that traditional Marcom has been like, oh, that's that thing that geeks or cryptocoin people are on. Did I say that right? And
cryptocurrency.
Thank you. There are tremendous. I was at the doctor and a radiology tech said to me, oh, I meant to say XYZ, or I learned this really cool thing in a women in medicine radiology thread in a subreddit last weekend. And I was like, and she was talking to me as like a woman sisterhood solidarity thing around this thing that she had learned about the way we use language in medicine. And it was a 55-year-old tech female, and I wouldn't have necessarily thought, even as a Marcom person, like, I bet she hangs out on Reddit. I would never have thought about it. And anyway, there are some uber fascinating humans there that I think we don't.
Oh, I think that's great. And
check out.
It's a great place to answer some of the questions that your customers might be having, or just being part of those discussions. And
totally.
I know Quora was really big for that, but Reddit, I think, is even... I personally like Reddit better than Quora if I had to pick a platform, but that is so fascinating that same. If you were to do a poll and ask me what platforms do you think this person in their 55 years old, what are they interested in, or where they spend their time? And
I'd be Facebook and maybe Pinterest, and then I'm like, whoa, I didn't do her justice at all. Like making a lot of assumptions there.
It's been fascinating. COVID has forced a lot of people to move, to become more tech savvy. My mom's a teacher. She teaches students that are in 7th grade. Yeah, God bless her for sure. Now she's on a platform where they spend all their days on social media, playing video games on their computer. And now they're like, here's your teacher that you need to pay attention to for, however many hours. So but she has made the adjustment and has learned how to do video editing, has learned how to put together online presentations, and is like doing Zoom calls with different, multiple classes throughout the day. So it's forced a few people to level up. And I'm curious to see, during this time, what are some of the trends? And then as people go back to whatever, I hate this term, new normal, but whatever that people go back to, I think we're forever changed because of this.
I had a bottle of wine with my husband in March, and I said, whether or not the world changes from this, I choose to be changed by it. This is an opportunity to be who you always wanted to be. So there's actually no more excuses to not. So there's a great Instagram account called the Nap Ministry, which is encouraging people to like resist we need to grind and we need to work 25 hours a day, and you can just rest too. So if that's part of like who you always dreamed of being, I encourage that. But
it's called the Nap Ministry. Like they promote naps, or they're saying grind really hard and then sleep for like a couple minutes and keep grinding hard.
It is the idea. It's without getting political, it's kind of like we've internalized capitalism, and that like production equals the value of you, and that's not true. So the idea of like it's a really sacred and successful move to take a nap sometimes and to recharge, because you're not going to pour from an empty cup kind of thing. But also, you writing emails until 9 o'clock at night doesn't prove that's not where your worth is, and that doesn't make you successful necessarily, unless you've decided that that's true for you. But I feel like COVID is the great equalizer, and it's the breakdown so we can have the breakthroughs. So I welcome a lot of that. It's why we talked a little bit right before this that I've been pursuing, other certification or other activities that I've been doing. So it's like, what the heck am I waiting for anyway? So
yeah, it's never too late to become the person you always wanted to be.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you brought up before transitioning that last part, because I know you're doing a lot of legacy work.
Yeah.
Is that we're in a time, what was I going to say, where people are, oh shoot, yeah, they're having the opportunity to kind of revisit, rethink things. Gosh, I lost my train of thought.
No, that's all right. Yeah, and a lot of unemployed, which is presenting people, whether they wanted it or not, with an opportunity to pivot. So, yeah, I've been spending a lot of time and a lot of my time on LinkedIn, just thinking about that population too, and seeing how we've been able to hire some awesome communication and creative people who unfortunately were let go. So there's been, I hope there's more of that our community does too, of like pick up some freelancers right now and give people a shot, because a lot of those 30% of women who have to watch kids could do 5 to 10 hours of really dope PR or social work for you right now. Anyway, I just think now is the time too, to take care of your community if you're in a position to do that.
Yeah. And I just want to say a big thank you to you right now, because I see you post all the time for freelancers, for job listing,
yes.
job opportunities on LinkedIn. And you're just doing a great service to just connecting people that might not have been otherwise connected. So for those of you, like right now, if you're listening, go follow Jess on LinkedIn, and she will help. She's the great connector of.
Yeah, I love that. And shout out to Peggy Kitzmiller, who introduced you and I feel like, yeah, those are gifts that keep giving. So
definitely.
really
Yeah.
awesome.
Big shout out to Peggy. Thank you so much. Yeah, I know. So we've known each other for, a handful of years now. It's been crazy how quickly time flies. And some of the things that, working on just 3 or 4 years ago seem like they've changed, like things just change very rapidly today. Technology has shifted everything on its head. And, we have here in the notes, like social isn't just a shiny toy anymore. It's kind of evolved and matured a little bit. And so taking it seriously and showing up appropriately is kind of the key.
Have you watched The Social Dilemma, Brian?
I have, yeah.
I have not watched it. I've been avoiding it, but just watching the conversation that's come out of it. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I wasn't, I guess without giving too many spoilers, I wasn't as much like shocked, because I live in this world and I understand that like there is a whole back system to all of this. I think that in the earliest days of Facebook and Twitter, maybe you did post things and they were kind of on this feed and people found them, and maybe they didn't. But there is a whole algorithm that changes. And we've even seen in the last couple of years that the algorithm has changed on Facebook, where the organic reach that you used to have, they cap it off at a certain amount. Whereas I think you're still, and so they talk about, I would say another good supplemental video to the Social Dilemma is The Great Hack. Those two movies together kind of will give you you can piecemeal your understanding of social. And, I don't want to hate too much on social media, because it's opened up so many doors for us, but it is not. I'm curious to hear as a marketer, because manipulation is not the right term, but there is a fine line between like what propaganda is, someone maybe like putting out some false information or trying to ostracize a group of people, versus, doing something that's for the greater good and doing it in a way that isn't, I don't know. Manipulative.
Yeah, right. I took a media ethics class in graduate school too, and it was my favorite one, because we talked about the difference, obviously, like between ethics and morality. And the idea of morality is that there's a good and an evil, or a good and a bad, which is really kind of rooted in like religion, traditional like Christianity almost. And ethics is, there's different philosophies of in school, it was, hey, there's a local paper that has kind of an ethical stance that they never show dead bodies on their newspaper, on their front page, because it makes everybody upset in the neighborhood, in the community. And then there might be another newspaper magnate and owner who, there was a big drowning in the town and one child passed away and died. And we're wanted to put a photo of that child's feet on the front page, because even though it might cause harm to the one family, it could save many others who saw that and were impacted and were a lot more safe around water. And the idea of, is it okay to hurt one person if it helps a lot of others? Or a different body of ethics would say, it's never okay to hurt anyone. And neither of those is good or bad. It's just a different approach to it. But so I think about ethics and the fact that social has never grown up and decided that it's important enough to have a body of ethics the same way that PR does and journalism does and every other, practice in our space does say this is our code of conduct in this. And then I listened to a great Stanford professor on an interview a couple of years ago. And he said, if you aren't paying to use the platform, then you're the product. Duh. So my practice, we made the difficult decision in the last few months that we'll continue to use Facebook to help some of our clients who have to reach people in that space for COVID screening or financial support and to help people. But we're not going to take on any new Facebook business moving forward because as an advertiser, I am the customer at Facebook. And we individually are the product. And I'm not comfortable helping to facilitate what I have personally deemed as really irresponsible and dangerous behavior from a media company. But to your point, this movie has been fascinating because all the friends I have outside of our industry are like, did you know? And I'm like, oh yeah. And I used to have conversations with my husband where he'd be like, this is totally unacceptable. And I'd say, but we live in did you think that altruism was the end game for Facebook? Like, it's a bottom line game because we are in a capitalist society. So they're looking for money. And if altruism comes in to help make them more money through a really dope brand campaign, then that's great. But they never promised. That wasn't the promise that they made. I mean,
I've heard some scary things like what's good for Facebook isn't always best for humanity is what I've heard.
100,000%.
And I'm like, yeah. And it's really, it makes sense because now they have, so many employees and they need to kind of get a bottom line or else, their families, go hungry. And so, maybe we can touch upon this, talking about quarterly results is a really tough model for marketers and talking about brand, if you're trying to get your results by the end of the quarter, brand takes, if you're doing it right, you're building a lifelong brand that is, has values and is going to be kind of growing over the long term. But we have so many of these short-term targets that make it really tricky. And so you might do some of these things that are going to, solve the problem today, but aren't going to be a long-lasting solution.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that feels like greed, right? Or profit over people. And yet I have clients who say we have no mission without a margin. Like we have to make enough money to do all the good things that we do, which doesn't mean that you get to be an evil corporation. But I can understand that there's this healthy tension between mission and margin for a lot of people because the dollars help facilitate the good work that you can do in the world. But
there's companies that are doing well with sustainability at the forefront with their values leading before profit. And so, it's just, we're in an interesting time and the rules, around capitalism are a little bit more open around that. I
started 15 years ago at a PR company that did triple bottom line clients. So they only worked with clients who supported the planet and their people and their customers. And it was right when greenwashing was the thing. So everybody was eco-friendly and everybody was eating organic and everybody was gluten-free all of a sudden, which they weren't, only some were celiac. Then watchdogs came out and said, hey, let's actually make sure that they're walking the walk if we're going to put the B Corp sign or they're going to put, some of those kind of stamps on products. So I think customers and clients, like we're getting a lot smarter and vetting kind of stuff that doesn't feel authentic and people who are just rushing in to make a buck on a value move. Like now we support Black people. It's like, okay, that doesn't really ring true. I haven't seen you walk the walk. And And I don't see you kind of putting those resources behind that to make a difference. But it's an evolution, but it comes and goes, and there'll be another kind of mad dash probably for it. But I think
there'll always be something new,
smarter.
Is that kind of around the time where people, were printing out their own labels for, why their thing was organic, and they would put it on there, and it kind of it's very deceptive.
Yeah. And it's hard to know. Is it okay? Do I need organic apples, or can they, but like organic bananas that don't have to have organics, you're going to take them off. I don't know. Yeah. That's really hard.
I always heard like if it has a peel, then maybe you don't need organic.
Thank you.
See,
your podcast people didn't think they'd learn all about the produce section, but they did. But shout out to B Corp. There are so many good businesses in our Portland community who have worked really hard and invested money and time in becoming B Corp certified. And they are legit, like ethical, awesome humans who also happen to be really good at doing the work that they do. Avenue Agency, comes to mind, and Anna over there, you should have on the podcast. But there's a lot of people that work hard to do meaningful work that's not exploiting anyone.
Exactly. I think those are some great examples. And then talking about, in those spaces, they had, groups in there that were, regulated, said, these are the rules. And then, social media, I wonder how long it took for like journalism. I'm sure in the early days, like late 1800s, there weren't as many rules either. And it was probably, with the, yellow journalism, the, Pulitzer, all of that caused people to maybe like, hey, maybe we should put some regulations around this. Right. Is it just a matter of time that not Facebook, but social media in general starts to get a little bit more regulated in your mind?
Yeah. Yes. I hope so. I don't know. Yeah. I hope. I think it requires, that somebody has an appetite for it. Maybe there are nonprofit watchdogs, and I haven't sought them out or come across them that are doing. I'm sure there are a lot of kind of tech ethics groups, and there's a lot of people researching this space that are much smarter than I. So I know there are really smart subject matter experts and really thoughtful people coming together having this dialogue. I haven't seen kind of as a practice like the PRSAs of the world, but for social, I haven't seen a lot of that. But maybe socialmedia.org or some of those other groups have already started to put something together. I think maybe with the Social Dilemma movie and with the news highlights of Zuckerberg, there will be more of an appetite and a demand that that there is a body of ethics around it. I would take an oath to do no harm if I could.
Right. And you would hope that most people that are are human and want to make the world a better place.
Yeah. But it'll limit some of our opportunity, like personalization, right? It's really creepy to retarget you, and yet it's really effective. So there'll be, this.
Yeah, people wouldn't do it if it worked.
Yeah,
if it didn't work. So.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Well,
we've covered so much ground, Brian. I love it.
It was great because we didn't even have to stick to the script or stick to the outline, and we've covered a lot of ground. Is there? We've kind of touched upon a lot of these. Is there anything in particular that stands out? We haven't even really talked about Tiller. Would you like to talk about Tiller marketing and the work that you guys do, and who would be an ideal client or types of clients that you guys would like to have?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. We work across industries, but if you've if you're navigating compliance or just sensitivities in your industry, and especially in light of what's happening now, we help you navigate that and proactively as much as we can so that we don't have to do cleanup. But we've got creative in-house and SEO and digital advertising, and we do a whole lot of content marketing. So a whole lot of communications and optimizing your web and social, and some of the most fun projects are really coming in and working with teams to elevate their skill set. There are so many really talented in-house social and digital people that just need an outside person to come in and validate, or to say, yeah, this person is kicking butt, but they need to be plugged in a different way. So consulting and training is a big one that we do, or coming in to kind of audit what you've already got going and say, oh, in this new reality, here's where we could be saving dollars, but also just having a bigger impact. So a lot of the work and the fun projects, we get to come in and do that kind of evaluation. and then provide you with a crawl, walk, run, good, better, best kind of recommendation. And a lot of people want to take that stuff and just do it in-house because they're like, yeah, we've got people already. Or great, you've hit that we need another resource for the SEO, and then they can take it and run with it. But no, we work with everybody from kind of mom and pop community clinics to large institutions with lots of politics. So we, yeah,
you guys can navigate it all. Well,
yeah,
and I want to, just, or I think a lot of the listeners are going to take away from this. Like, you guys come from a place of empathy, and you guys are very thoughtful, and you guys, I appreciate that you guys do like an assessment, and you're able to meet your clients or customers wherever they're at. So, I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and you're making the world a better place, which
Damn it. Thank you.
If it's not all going to hell in a handbasket or whatever the saying goes,
we're doing a little bit. Yeah. Do no harm at least. Yes. Yeah. No, we'll get through it together. Like, there are good things that still happen on the internet. It's just, it's hard. You got to seek them out and then like defend them. I got into this work because I believe in like online community, and there are such like tremendous things that happen there, and that can only happen there because I don't live down the street or in the same space, or I don't have access to the same resources. Like, there are so many good things about it. So I think that's why I've held off on watching The Social Dilemma, because I'm like, oh man, I don't need somebody else to shit on my work. I totally recognize the dark side of this, and we work really hard not to play in that space. So that line of like what's manipulative versus what's really strategic and creative is always a line you got to walk.
Well, I think that's great. Yeah. I think you nailed it. You hit it on the head, and you pretty much explained the social dilemma, which was like, if you're not buying the product, you are a product. And I appreciate that you guys show up in that space in a way that's, helping and not, contributing to all the kind of the negative. And I don't know what it is. I think kind of the negative stuff, especially as humans, we're like kind of fear driven, or like we're always trying to either move away from fear, or we are fearful. So I think that's probably what emotionally grips us, and what's, sticks in our mind. I mean, you're a public speaker, if you, you could give a speech to 100 people, and all 99 of them could say, hey, you did great. And one person says, hey, I didn't like that. And you're only in the one negative is going to stand out in your mind than all the positive comments. And it can be kind of similar on social media too.
Yeah. Yes, totally. Yeah. You have to have an appetite for it, or a thick skin to be in that space. And I think am I happy with babies swiping like toys that aren't swipeable, and like the idea of it like impacting us at a really core foundational level of our humanity? No, you should probably watch your screen time. That's not tight. And like,
wait, what are babies doing?
I'm just saying that there are plenty of, and then no criticism of parents who throw a device in front of their kid, because you do what you got to do to make it work right now. Are there boundaries that we collectively probably need to set around our technology use to be happier, more, successful humans? Totally. And I
think it's like you talked about that balance. And
yes, right.
Wait, so babies are just like swiping a screen.
Right.
I heard this.
And
I don't know if it's
their brain. Yeah.
I heard that babies are like looking down more, and they're like developing like another muscle in their neck and all crazy stuff. Like,
oh no, we'll be monkeys again before we know it. So there's something to look forward to.
Oh man, I know, it's like this blessing and a curse all at the same time, where you have access to all the technology, and then with that comes all the
responsibility,
negative.
I suppose, right? Personal and otherwise.
Yeah. I think Anyway, what I was gonna say,
we'll do this over beers next time.
Yeah, we'll do this over beers, and well, this could easily be broken down into multiple different podcasts. But are there any topics on the list? We did jump around a little bit, but I wanted to make sure we highlighted some of the things here. Does everything look good? Anything that?
Yeah, it looks perfect. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think there's just a ton of opportunity, and I hope people are just taking care of themselves when they're working in this space, because when you're online and you're holding space for every buddy in this moment, you're also getting all of their fear and anxiety and all the things that are just happening for us as communities. So just pay your social media manager more, or be kinder to them. And then social media managers, please get offline when it's possible, and maybe not check every notification, or not use your phone as your alarm clock. That was a little hack that I've made just in the last couple of years that has made a big difference, because it's really hard to unplug in this moment when your whole life, work, school, everything is right here. But yeah, if there's a way to do that.
What do you use now instead of your phone as an alarm clock?
An alarm clock.
Nice.
It's crazy. I know. I didn't want to do it. And my girlfriend's like, you got to do it. You got to put your phone in the other room. And I was like, oh, because I was waking up with it and I would go to bed with it. Which, if you're doing that and you're totally having fun and it's adding a lot of value to your life, awesome. If it's taking something away, or keeping you from being present in other ways, then maybe we could set boundaries. I don't know.
Yeah, we're at this weird point where we've maybe have gone so far in advance with technology that now we need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit, and you can just kind of have a normal alarm clock, or even I know people that don't even have their phone in their room just because it's so easy to want to if it lights up, you're like, oh, I want to go check that. I know for me, a lot of my best ideas come at nighttime. So I was tempted. I was like, well, I need my phone here because if I have an idea, I need to write it down or else I lose it forever. But I went old school too and found a pen that glows in the dark. So
nice. Yes, brilliant. My husband just bought me a Remarkable tablet. Shout out Remarkable. I'll be your influencer. And they're coming out with a second version. I have the first, but it's a tablet that's not, it's you can just write on it, but I can also sync it and take all those notes and save it or organize it. I can search through it. But I'm not online and it's not digital, and I don't need to use my fun glasses because I'm on a screen. So there are so many little hacks. I feel like just sharing those and encouraging people to explore what's right for them is totally a nice thing to do on this podcast.
No, this is awesome. I've appreciated having you on the show, Jess, and
likewise, thank you.
Going in a whole bunch of different topics. I always, it's just always a pleasure chatting with you. And I guess if I had to ask one last question, what is your favorite part about what you do? What gets you out of bed every morning? What feels good with working with your clients?
I had a client text me yesterday and tell me that she wanted to go wine tasting when it was safe enough to do that. And she's somebody that saw me at a talk 5 years ago, brought me in to do a training. Now we've been working together as their full service marketing team for 2 years, and she's genuinely my friend. And she has leveled up in her ability as a digital practitioner because of our work together. It's been such a rewarding partnership, and to see her growth has been so awesome. And so, in my spare time, I teach for a couple universities, just adjunct teaching. And I think that is my absolute favorite thing. I love to be a student, and then I love to kind of pass on as much as I can. So things like this are also really rewarding because I feel like it's, I don't know, that's the opportunity that we have, is to just give, and it all comes back. Karma is the universe is a generous place. So I like teaching and I like learning with my clients. That's my favorite.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, I think that quote, the more you give, the more you receive. And I think if listeners haven't already picked up right now, you're an incredible speaker, an incredible professor. And I think storytelling and education are two of your things that you really bring a lot of value to people. And so
awesome. Thank you for the invite. This was so fun. And
this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love listening to this, and I'm just excited for where you're going to take this whole series. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Jess. All right, everyone. You can check out the show notes to follow Tiller Marketing on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Connect with Jess. She is a lifesaver, and she's just awesome all around. So Jess, thank you.
You're welcome.
And until next time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
want to say a big thanks for tuning into the Media Marketing Podcast. Please subscribe to get notifications for new episodes, which are coming out every Thursday morning, or at least we're striving for that. Feel free to visit our Facebook page where you can like and join the media marketing community. This is a good resource for collaborating, sharing ideas with other media creators, marketers, and those just looking to build their network. So until next time.